Oh, hey there. I want you to know that as bad as your life is, and as much as you might have things to complain about, there are people all over the world who are happy with less than what you have. Have you thought about that? Have you ever been to a third world country? Have you ever seen like real poverty? I mean like real poverty. I want to tell you, when I went to Tanzania last year, was it last year? When I went to Tanzania, however long ago it was, we were over there, and it's very common for me to say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" Because I think it's interesting. I like to hear what people do for a living, and I want to know that. And after a while, the guy that had been a missionary there, who was my friend, he was our translator also. He said, "John, stop asking people what they do for a living." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "They don't do anything for a living. They live in a village in the middle of nowhere. Let me tell you what they do for a living. They wake up, they hope nothing killed them overnight. They look for something to eat. Maybe they can kill something, they can hunt for something, they can find something to eat. Then they try to cook it, prepare it, make it, whatever. They go try to find some water. That's what they do for a living. They live. They don't know how old they are. They don't have anything. They literally sleep on the ground next to a small fire that they made with some sticks that they found. And they try to get something to eat. And if they don't eat, then they don't eat." And those people were happy. They smiled all the time. And I thought, what's the matter with us? Then we went to Kenya. Okay, different trip. We went to an orphanage. And the children in the orphanage, let me just tell you a couple of the stories, okay? One child, the mother had the baby and put it in a plastic bag and dropped it into a latrine. And a latrine is like an outhouse, if you will. And somebody else heard the baby crying and fished the baby out, went inside and took the baby out. And so my friends, Bob and Julie, adopted that baby because they have an orphanage. And when they adopt them in this orphanage, just so that you know, America has 400,000 orphans. Africa has 57 million orphans. Just in Kenya alone, there are 2 million orphans, okay? And I may be a little rough on this stat, but 2 out of 3 people on the continent of Africa have AIDS. Therefore, these orphans, nobody's going to adopt them. There are no parents. Both their parents are dead. They're wandering around the streets 3 and 4 or 5 years old, right, by themselves, just trying to find something to eat, crying, and not knowing how to take care of themselves. And of course, my friends take them in. Now, other people do too. Okay, there are lots of orphanages. There's lots of people with good hearts that go and they do these things. There's a set of twins. Okay, and when they were about 4 years old, they lived in a very small house, and the mother drank poison in front of them and died in front of the door and blocked the doorway. And they were stuck inside that room with their mother for 3 days while they screamed. And finally, the neighbors were like, "What? Stop screaming." And then they found that the mother was dead. And my friends adopted them. Now, they were old enough to remember, and so that's traumatic. I'm sure you can imagine. However, these same orphans and 100 others, when we were there, they sang to us, and I quote, "May God bless you, may God bless you, may God bless you so much." And they said, "God has done so much for me that I cannot tell it all." They sang that over and over and over again. "God has done so much for me that I cannot tell it all." And I'm like, how do you tell me that God has done that much for you? I live in wealth. I'm rich in America, right? Like, we have everything. We have cars and houses and utilities and cell phones, internet, all the things, right? Except for happiness. And these people who have nothing, who have faced real tragedy, things we can't even imagine, tell me God has done so much for me, I cannot tell it all. We went to a prison, okay, medium security. This is something like drunken disorderly, petty theft, things like this. They're serving 3 to 5 years. If you're a mother and you have a baby in prison, that means you keep that baby with you in prison. They had basically just a big stone wall with barbed wire around it, and in the middle there was a little lean-to thing with a hose spigot where they could get water. They slept on the dirt. We brought them toilet paper, toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, shampoo, feminine products, and baby toys, a few other things, lotion. And I remember when we were in America thinking, why are we getting this stuff for these people in prison? Like, prison gives you that stuff. Incorrect. If somebody doesn't bring you this stuff in prison, You don't have this stuff in prison. And so we brought it to them, right? And there was a women's side and there's a men's side. The women had 64 women and 8 children, and the men had about 800 men in there. Now there was people in plain clothes, and they were the accused, and then there was people in black and white stripes, and they were the convicted, okay? But they were all in there for 3 to 5 years. And then one of our people said, can we sing together? But it got mistranslated. And what they thought that we meant was, bring your best person forward and have them sing, and then you guys bring your best person forward and have them sing. And so they brought somebody forward that was a prisoner, and he started to sing beautifully. Beautifully he started to sing, okay? And in Swahili, they repeat a lot of things, and then the crowd kind of chants it back, and they repeat it, and the crowd chants it back, and there's this rhythm to everything, right? And so we asked, like, hey, what is he saying? And he was saying, God, how long until you deliver me from this prison? Which was some type of spiritual song for them, okay? But also had real meaning because they were really in a prison. And the crowd got more and more riled up, and pretty soon the guards were like, we got to stop this because these guys, we're going to have a riot on our hands, and there's more of us than there is of them. And so like, hey, we're done here. And they're like, okay, now it's your turn. Bring your best person forward and have them sing. And it turns out that there was a very good singer, and she got up and sang Amazing Grace. And everybody sang along, and it was beautiful. This is only a few examples. I know so many examples of people that are going through real hard times, and they are so grateful with such a great attitude, and they are happy. And I'm like, they are happy with less than what you have. So why in the world are you letting petty things bring you down? Don't you think it's time to be grateful for what you have? Don't you think it's time to go, you know what? I got a lot going for me. Something to think about.